NFL Inside Blitz, week number 11. Ron and Ted from Sports USA Live. He's got two more games, and they're good ones this week. Ted, take it away.
Jets at the Patriots in the morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time with my Sports USA pregame show at sportsusa.live or hopefully on one of your local radio stations. And Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, the late game. A couple of very interesting matchups. Hey, I think there's a bunch of them this week, but, as far as the Patriots and Jets, they're both off of buys. So that really helps their cause, from a rest standpoint. No excuses. Good timing this time of the year. I always love to ask the question, is this a good time to have your bye? To my interviews. And they often say yes or no. There's excuses. But in my mind, I think this is the time of the year where most teams could use it. They could use a couple of them, actually. Anyway, bottom line is that they played each other just a few weeks ago in Week 8, and it was the Patriots over the Jets 22-17. And we might remember that game, but the Patriots have been handling the Jets for a long time. How about New York losing 11 straight at New England? How much will that be a factor this time? And it's a weird division. How about the AFC East, the only division with all winning teams? And right now, every team would be in the playoffs, and that's never happened before. Of course, we're 8 weeks away from that being different, but TBDs all over the place, Ron.
It is an interesting matchup. The bye week before a divisional game is always even extra special because it carries so much importance. Any of these teams could come in first or fourth. And who would have thought that at the beginning of the year? Maybe three of them, but here we have the Jets, who, in my opinion, have earned the right to be considered in this conversation. Because if you look at their on-field stats, one of the better pass defenses in the league, an enormous change in how many points they've allowed, a top-tier run defense, 26 sacks already in the season. They only had 33 last year. I'm going to pause right now. Chris, this team has to be in the top 5 to 7 in your defensive metrics. Tell me.
Defense.
I gave you no warning, but
you gave me no warning. But I will tell you one thing. I concur with what you've been saying, and I'm kind of enjoying all the nerds that are on New England this week because actually I have the Jets number 2.
Okay. See, all the stats I'm rattling off, all the metrics that I use, I said, if Chris doesn't agree with me, I might have to fire him or something like that because he has to have the same numbers.
As many stats as you guys have, the one stat that stands out to me, not offense, not defense, not special teams, not anything, but what only matters. The Jets are 4-0 on the road, and that is not easy no matter who the hell you're playing.
The antithesis of the Lions, of course. But
how the Lions got into this conversation?
I always have to weed them in somehow.
Yeah, it's required.
But to finish my point, the nerd crew seems to be on New England, and I think Ron and I might end up on the same side on this one. The Jets have an excellent defense, obviously number 2 on my list, and they shot themselves in the foot last time. They were going to run away with that game. They had that pick 6 called back on the stupid roughing the passer penalty. That would have really changed the whole climate of that game, and it just deflated the Jets' balloon for whatever reason. And it's a good thing that they're coming off the bye here. They'll make some adjustments. The Patriots are going to make some adjustments. The Jets will be a little bit healthier. And they have a little bit of the experience against New England, and the pain from losing that game should still be front and center. So those are my thoughts on that game. I think the Jets have a hell of a chance, and if you're getting over a field goal here on this low total in the 30s, what is this total? 38, and you're getting over a field goal? Sign me up.
What about Zach Wilson, though? What are your guys' thoughts on him? Because there's continuing the conservative kind of, it's all throughout the New York, New Jersey stuff, right? Whether you're Daniel Jones or Zach Wilson, you're trying to make sure that guy doesn't screw up the game for you. And that continues to be, and he's doing okay.
That's going to be the key point. So I'm glad you brought that up. He has I believe, a 4 TD, 5 interception ratio, although he did gain some confidence with a big game against New England in the first one. But obviously, he still basically hasn't played more than 16 games because he was hurt a lot last year and he missed the first few games this year. So his low body of work and 2 weeks for New England to get ready for him. I think we have to play some devil's advocate and talk about New England's defense, which is usually fundamentally sound. It is, again, with their pass defense. We know about their special team talent. They're always in the top 5. They have 32 defensive sacks of their own this year, which is highly unusual because they don't usually blitz much. They prefer to come back in coverage. They had 35 last year. They're only 3 away from last year. This is a very unusual New England pressure defense that we're seeing. Basically, the Jets can run on New England. New England tends to give up running yards. What's going to be interesting to me is Zach Wilson's legs. What does he do with his legs in this game? Because I think mobile quarterbacks have a little bit of an edge against New England. And I think that has to come into play. He has to escape the pocket, escape the pass rush, and make a big play happen. Otherwise, it plays right into New England's hands.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have, though, from a Zach Wilson standpoint is the turnover situation against the team with 17 takeaways this year, and they're 3rd in the league in that. So that's not a good matchup for Zach Wilson. So, again, the conservative kind of play calling here, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and let's not forget Zach Wilson threw a pick trying to throw the ball away last time, too. It got so ugly in that second half. And as Ron always focuses on with special teams, special teams made the difference between the cover and the non-cover in that game because the Patriots excelled on that. They missed no kicks. They made all their field goals. They did what they had to do, but the Jets kept keeping them out of the end zone. And to build on what Ron was saying, give the Pats some credit, I've got New England as the number 5 defense already, and Belichick is, has been quoted in the past that his defense doesn't even get rolling and working together until around weeks 8 and 9. So this is the sweet spot for the Patriots defense.
Yeah, and a home game should be a nice advantage for them as well. But as you say, there's no giant advantage for either side. And if you're getting over a field goal either way, you got a little bit of value right there immediately.
Before you get to your interviews, because I'm curious about hearing them too, what Chris said about the Jets keeping New England out of the end zone with the red zone stops, that's what this game boils down to. Not only Zach Wilson's legs, but who makes the most of their opportunities in the red zone, because there may not be that many opportunities in the red zone if these defenses are playing up to par. And you got 2 people that you interviewed that are offensive players. So what are they going to do? Because the guys you interview tend to do well. So let's hear about it.
Well, Ramondre Stevenson, by the way, before I go into this game, how about our guy from last week, Jonathan Taylor? We call that in studio every week. We call it Sports USA Karma. If you come on in my pregame show, you might have a really nice special day. And what a day he had, huh? How about that one great run? He was huge in that ball game, wasn't he? Was. And that turned out to be just another Saturday on a Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, what we took out of that was just the passion and it was obvious that locker room was not in shambles and there was still optimism. And that interview had a lot of value and it was well done, Ted.
Thank you. And by the way, the other game just turned out to be the game of the year we had in Buffalo, Minnesota. And Justin Jefferson, remember the question I asked, who was it? Was it Adam Thielen? I almost forgot already.
Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I said, is this guy, isn't he going to be an all-time great? And that was an all-time great catch that might be the best catch I've ever seen. Seriously. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about the OBJ catch. He didn't have a guy all over him with 2 hands on the ball. That was the helmet catch without the helmet. It was unbelievable.
It was.
It really was. That's how good Justin Jefferson's hands are. Anyway, well, let's go to Ramondre Stevenson first, who's had an unbelievable season his second year, and the last 3 weeks he's really come on.
Andre, first I'm wondering, how aware are you that Coach Belichick praised the heck out of you this week on your great improvement in every facet of the game this season?
No, I'm not aware of that. I didn't hear that, but that coming from a coach like him, it is unbelievable. And just the respect he has for me and that I have for him, it is great. I love it.
Beautiful. So what stands out to why you've had such growth in this year's second season?
Honestly, I just feel like first and foremost, I feel like I just put the work in, and I feel like I just listen to my coaching points from the coaches and just the older players, and just how to carry myself in this locker room and on the field and even outside of the locker room, and just taking all the coaching points from all the great people in this locker room.
The one key stat that stands out to me, through the first 6 weeks, you had 21 targets total and 22 over the last 3 games. So is that strictly the coach's confidence in you, or what is it?
Yeah, I would say it's just confidence from just my teammates and my coaches, because the quarterback has to throw me the ball, so he definitely has to be confident in that. So I think I'm just showing just in practice that I could get open and catch the ball.
We're with New England running back Ramondre Stevenson. I call you running back, but you're catching the ball as much as anybody right now, which is great. You talk about your quarterback. How about Mac Jones and how he's become such a leader on that club?
Yeah, Mac Jones. He's just I feel like he's just a born leader. He knows how to win first and foremost. He's done it a lot, and he just knows what it takes to become like a powerhouse team and just play good football. So. Yeah, having him as my quarterback is great. I love that man.
How do you explain the ups and downs of this season? It's been sort of crazy with you guys. You had 2 2-game winning streaks, a couple of 2-game losing streaks. Where does that come from?
Just being inconsistent, and that's what we're working on right now. We're just honing down on being more consistent and just executing, and that's really what it comes down to. Just executing our plays and just being consistent as possible. Everything's not going to be perfect, but trying to be perfect, that would be enough consistency for us.
Well, we had a few weeks ago, you beat the Jets, and now here you are again. What did you learn from that game you got to take into this one?
I'm taking a little bit from it, but not too much. It's really? The NFL, so each game is going to be very different. So just honing in on just their personnel and just how they're going to approach the game more than anything. So just knowing how they play and just going out there and trying to play a hard-fought game on Sunday. I know it's going to be physical. We just got to go out there and play our best ball.
Any specific things, though, that you're focusing on their defense that you learned from that one?
From the prior game? Honestly, no. No. I'm just going in with a clear head, just reading the scouting report like I never played them again, just going in and just going to be ready on Sunday to play them.
All right, sounds good. How about the importance of Devontae Parker to your group?
Oh, yeah. He's very instrumental in our success, I believe, just like every other player. So potentially having him back for Sunday, that's huge.
Yeah, it really is. Last thing, Ramondre, it's only week 11, but you're only 1 game behind the Jets, and you've already beaten them and can tie them in the division. So how big is this ball game when it comes to the whole picture?
Yeah, I think this ball game is huge. Just like any other game in November, after November, those are the biggest games and where football teams need to play our best ball. So that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah, it's huge. It's going to be a little cool out. You wear your sweater during the game?
No, you'll see me out there in no sleeves this week. Sure.
I'm
embracing it.
I love that. A little macho never hurt anybody, right?
Exactly.
All right, that's Ramondre Stevenson, who learned, as he's only a second-year player. I'm sure Coach Belichick said directly into his eyes, when Ted calls you, don't give him too much, because we don't talk to the media that much.
That's true.
I deal with that all the time, except for Slater. He gives me a lot more than most, but that's just the way the Patriots are. So it's no biggie. One of the things that I get from that is the leadership of Mac Jones. They love the fact that he's been a winner wherever he's been. And that can really rub off on a team, specifically when you don't turn the ball over. And I think Mac Jones is incredibly good at that, considering his age and his lack of NFL experience. I think he's really polished.
With the Jets, they're a pretty young team. They had a great draft, and this reminds me a little bit of Seattle last week when they couldn't quite handle the moment in Munich, Germany last week. And Chris and I talked about that on Tuesday. Now this is New England. They know everything there is to know about New England. It's a rematch game. It's a little bit different, but they are still young, and they can't come into these rookie mistakes in this game. They know how big this is. It's a divisional game. It changes the order in the AFC East. Any thoughts on whether or not, Chris, the youth of that team could get in the way, or is this just they played them, they know what they're doing?
Yeah, well, I think that the game one, I think that first game must have stung. I mean, I think that's still with them, as I mentioned previously, and having that game sting and still only a few weeks in the rearview mirror, and having a bye available to reset. And as you referenced, Ron, I'd be surprised if they don't do some designated running plays for Wilson and take the pressure off his passing game a little bit and start to make the Patriots a little bit uncomfortable with the mobility. Because as you referenced, they can't defend mobile quarterbacks. You can throw away the metrics on the Patriots against a mobile quarterback because a mobile quarterback's going to chew them up and spit them out. The other thing I'd like to say on this handicap is, looking back on these trailing 5 weeks, this is the bread and butter of the Patriots' schedule. And during this time period, they're winning, but somehow, some way, they've lost a lot of value on my metrics overall these last 5 weeks. They're the 6th worst team in the NFL over the last 6 weeks on my charts. So they're skating by. There's a lot of things that are falling through the cracks. And sure, the bye week may help them, but the last 5 weeks have not been, good as an overall product for the Patriots. And meanwhile, the Jets are, in the top half. They're still gaining and getting better with each week. So that's another reason why I like the Jets in this spot.
Well, you are tough on the Pats. They've won 2 straight, and they're losing ground.
Well, let me tell you something. That's the best thing that can ever happen because, we were on to the Rams being frauds earlier than anybody else. We were on to Green Bay being frauds earlier than anybody else. We knew Tennessee that I made fun of for the last 14, 15 months. Now that everybody jumped off that bus, we knew that they were strong and a play-on team. We knew the Bears were coming up before people realized the Bears were coming up. These types of things that we're measuring are measuring all aspects of the game, and the win and the score is the least of the evaluation because there's a lot of bad bounce luck and variables that go to winning and losing a game. If you try to tell me that Buffalo didn't completely and utterly humiliate the Vikings last week, but lost on the scoreboard, you don't know what happened on that game. Every single luck factor went the Vikings' way.
That's been their season.
And the public perception is that the Vikings are much better than they are. And that's great. And I wish we could take advantage of it this week. I'm not sure we will, but
I have an incredible case in point to what you said, and that was Kansas City 2 or 3 years ago. Remember their 7 or 8 game winning streak? They didn't cover any of them. They did not cover. So they kept winning. The public said they're winning, and the metrics said they're not winning by what they're supposed to be winning, so we'll keep fading them. It's probably the best example of a good team losing ground.
Right. But that's the reason I brought up with Ramondre about you guys win a couple, you lose a couple, you win a couple. Like, who are you guys? And that's where your numbers come into play, probably.
Exactly.
And even the dog is excited about it.
It's not even my dog yet.
You want to go with CJ Uzomah here, the tight end, former Cincinnati Bengal. We've spoken a few times over the years. Great guy. You might remember a couple of weeks ago when we had the Jets, and I talked to Tyler Conklin, and he mentioned how great it is to have CJ in the room, and they have a great tight end room that comes up here. They've won 5 of their last 6, and they're just on a roll. Let's hear from CJ Uzomah.
All those years in Cincinnati, what's the transition been like going to the Jets, specifically after your great run to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's been early. It was a little bit of a process for sure. I think even talking to friends who had jobs for a couple of years and then switching jobs, they're like, yeah, it's always going to be a little bit of a transition going from one place to another, especially after being there for 7 years, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, it was the first month and a half, it was a little trying to find my bearings and figure out, just the place in general, the city, all of that, and then, kind of connecting with teammates. But, man, after that, it was just everything was very, very smooth. There's a lot of team camaraderie and a lot of hanging out that we do. And, they've helped make this transition seamless. And then, yeah, on the field, man, it's been fun. As you can tell with the record and hopefully in our play, we're having a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking bottom line is that your adjustment in the room has been an easy one. We had Tyler Conklin on a couple of weeks ago, and he loves having you, and he says it's a great room.
Oh, yeah. Our tight end room is amazing, to be honest. It's a lot of fun. TC is great. Rook's great. Kenny's great. Coach Mid's great. You could go down, and every meeting that we have, we're having some laughs, and then we're getting down to business. So, and then we're having some laughs at the end. So it's a lot of fun. The room has definitely made it very easy and makes each day, a fun day.
Beautiful. So what about the adjustment to what your role is with this club? And it seems like you're asked to block more than you did in your Bengals days.
Yeah, for sure. It was a bit of that wasn't an adjustment really. I'll do whatever they tell me to do. I mentioned like 2 weeks ago, if they want me to be the equipment guy, as long as we're winning, I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes. So they tell me to go block, go cut off a 6-tech, go pin down a 6-tech, whatever it is. I'm here for it. I'm going to do it and do it to the best of my ability to make sure that as a team we're succeeding. And I'm just wanting to put myself in a position to make sure that I'm helping the team in any way I can.
Well, with Jets tight end C.J. Uzomah, describe the growth of your team since the early part of the season. You get off to that 1-2 start, and then boom, you've won 5 of 6.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing about this team and the biggest thing about teams that are successful in this league are if you win close games, that confidence going into the next week is huge. And so the fact that we've been able to win close games the way that we have is amazing. It's huge, right? Like, obviously you want to go out there, you want to hang up 50 points and win 50-0. It's not going to happen every year. It's not going to. In this league, it rarely happens, right? Yeah. But, if you're able to win those close games, which most games coming down in the fourth quarter are won by like 7 points or less, and you have that confidence in yourself and your team, when push comes to shove, you're like, oh, nice, it's a close game in the fourth quarter. We're going to win. And the ability for us to do that and to win those games, man, that shows just how mature we are as a young team, to have that confidence to be like, oh, nice, all right, this isn't going to phase us. We're going to come out, we're going to win this game, and there's no pressure on us right now. So I think that honestly is the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway of the first half of the season that I've noticed. What
about the biggest growth of Zach Wilson's game since you started working with him?
I think the game's slowing down for him. I think, this, I'll be honest, the city is kind of crazy in terms of just the media. We won 4 in a row and everybody's still criticizing everybody in the building. Every individual player still getting criticized, and we're like, dude, we're winning games. Like, I don't understand. Like, in my opinion, I'm like, I don't understand where this is coming from. We've won 4 straight, and people are still kind of on us right now. We're 6-3 right now. And people are still, who knows? It's looking bleak, and all of that falls on him. He's the quarterback of this organization, and I could have a terrible game, but no one's going to talk about how CJ had a terrible game. They're going to point the finger at Zach and say, okay, well, the offense was struggling because of him, not because of XYZ or anybody else. So, I think he's handling that very well. I think he's mature in that aspect, and on the field, he's just slowing things down. I think he's still learning a little bit how to get out of the pocket, scramble, keep his eyes down the field, and make a good decision with that. But I think at the same time, in practice and with what he's saying, with what he's telling the receivers and, the tight ends and the running backs when he scrambles where he wants us, now that we're on the same page, that growth is only gonna get, bigger, right? So there's a lot. I think he's maturing a lot as the season's progressed, as this year too for him has progressed, and I think the second half of the season you're going to see even more of that.
A couple more things real quick, CJ. Your biggest focus facing Bill Belichick's New England D and what you learned from that previous loss.
Yeah, man, that was a tough one. They're fundamentally sound. They've been in the system for a while. They have really good players. I think you can't hurt yourself against them. I think you have to play sound football. You have to take care of the football. Special teams wise, we've learned a little bit there too. I think we didn't play our best special teams wise for sure, and so that was a contributing factor. But as an offense, we can't hurt ourselves. We can't have self-inflicted wounds. We can't have self-inflicted penalties, takeaways, whatever the case is. We got to take care of the ball, and we got to come out making sure we're on our P's and Q's with protection, with route depth, with how we run routes, and with being on the same page with Zach.
And I know it's a week-to-week league, but, hey, you've already lost to this team. They can tie in the standings with a win. This game's got a lot of meaning for just another Week 11 matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is the next game is always the most important no matter what. So this game, holds a lot of weight. One, because it's the next game, obviously. Two, because we're coming off of a bye, and teams that come off a bye, you need to make sure that you hit the ground running. You can't take a step back in that direction. Or with that, and three, this is a divisional game, and divisional games always mean more, no matter what. So yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this game. It's not necessarily the standing aspect that we're looking at. It's the fact that this is a divisional game against a really good opponent that we have to make sure that we go out there and put our best foot forward to put us in a position to later in the season to do what we want to do.
Well, love your focus. That's what it's all about right now, baby.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you see why CJ is one of my go-to guys? When he was with Cincinnati, I spoke to him a handful of times. First time we've spoken since he's been with the Jets. This guy is as introspective as any player in the league. And look what he gives you. When I ask a question, he answers it, doesn't he? I mean, you don't get a lot like that anywhere.
Yeah, I think I've said it before. I really tune out player interviews for the most part.
Not usually, mine.
But we're getting some valuable stuff. He was able to get across the message that they at least have some confidence, and they're letting the criticism bounce off of them and kind of laugh at it. They don't feel like it doesn't. I don't sense any pressure on them, and that makes me feel better about leaning the Jets this week.
Yeah, I think there's something about what he mentioned that we talked about. His room is they're just laughing and having a great time, and they're winning, and the young guys are ahead of the curve as far as their age is concerned. All of that stuff has come into play. You got to give a lot of credit to Robert Saleh, of course, who's running the show on the sidelines. And there's just a lot of positivity there. And they don't give a damn about the New York media. They're trying to just laugh it off. And you don't get that a lot with a young team. It's usually, oh, baby, we're in trouble. Yeah. And a lot of credit to them.
Yeah, his awareness is very evident there. Awareness of the situation, awareness of his role, awareness of where his team is. Another very well-spoken guy.
Yep.
I can close with this. My power ratings do not actually support a New York Jet play. As much as I've talked about the defense and so on, I stick to it very carefully. I am not allowed to play it at 3. I have to play New England at 3. And so like with the Buffalo game where I almost hit that great middle last week, but Justin Jefferson took care of that. I have New England money. Chris and I talked about it on Tuesday. I do not anticipate that, or I did not anticipate this line staying at 3, not with the public, not with New England's, having 2 weeks to prepare and all that. I actually expect this line to touch 4, and I'd love to have key numbers 3 and 4 involved in this game. So it's not as much of a, I like New England, I like the Jets in this game. I can't ride completely with Chris on this one. we'll see what Zach Wilson brings to the table, and what he has to do is avoid those costly turnovers.
Yeah.
Well, we're head to head then, buddy. So I think it's
not quite head to head. We'll see where the number ends up. I may just be fooling around in this game more than anything, but I do have a play on the next game.
So did the CJ interview sway you at all, Ron, as far as like where that team is coming from at this time of the season?
No, I'm glad he confirmed the various things. It didn't sway me because I already felt the vibes from that team. I mean, this team can't be anything but excited with Sauce Gardner in the back, the back end of the defense, basically stopping everybody there. And he's going to do it again. New England wide receivers are not scary. No. Yeah, it's basically situational football. Bill Belichick wants to put a team in an uncomfortable situation, and he doesn't want his team on offense to be put in an uncomfortable situation. And if he is, the Jets are up to the task. I like the vibes of the team before what CJ said.
Right. And even though they have a hex over the Jets to the Patriots, right? At least to this point, they do.
I think recency, the fact that they played them just a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, might work slightly in the Jets' favor more than New England. Just because they want to get that taste out of their mouth.
Yep, makes sense. All right, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, guys. This time it's the Bengals off a bye, so a nice little rest vacation for them. Or the Steelers, they're 0-2 after wins this year, so that doesn't say a lot. But they're also perfect 2-0 because they got T.J. Watt back. So it's not bad. They were 1-6 without him. So that helps the cause, no doubt about it. Look, there's something about Cincinnati. I still feel they are better than their record at 5-4. The Steelers, you never know what team's going to show up there, but I do like what Kenny Pickett is doing at this stage of his rookie season. He's just a confident kid, and we don't have to talk about Mitchell Trubisky ever again, not at least regarding the Steelers. We don't. And Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. He's confident no matter what the hell happens with that team. And I love his attitude. I love his approach to the game. And he is another guy. He's just a winner, and he finds ways to win. And the Bengals are 5-7 since their 0-2 start, so they are winning and back to looking like a lot of maybe most expected a Super Bowl runner-up to look. What do you think, Ron?
Well, this is another rematch, but the week one, as Chris and I noted way back then, heavily favored Pittsburgh in that game. I know we were, some of us had a rather large wager on that particular game, week one, and we saw what happened. Remember, Burrow was off a procedure, just like Stafford and so on. They hadn't played anybody in the preseason. Their offensive line was supposed to be better, but like every offensive line that changes so many parts, it doesn't get better right away. And they allowed 7 sacks in that game. And even then they almost came back because Pittsburgh let them back in the door. And it took a kind of a weird situation at the end of the game for Pittsburgh to even win the game. So now, since he remembers that, they're a very, very, very rare road favorite in this series.
You're not kidding. In any series.
So, I mean, that's kind of strange there. And this game was flexed. Remember, this was supposed to be the Sunday night game, and all the talk at the beginning of the season was, would Cincy handle all these primetime matchups? And now we've got a regular season game. And I'm going to ask Chris the question again with Cincinnati. The one thing I don't like about Cincinnati is they only have 14 defensive sacks. That's underachieving, and that's going to be a big part of this game. But everything else, the way they play the run, the way they play their pass, I'm very impressed with that. Burrow had 4 interceptions in that very first week against Pittsburgh. He's only thrown 2 since then. Where do you have, Chris, Cincinnati's defense?
Well, I mean, you touched on very important issues there, that Cincinnati was ill-prepared to show up. 4 picks, sacks galore. Everything they did was bad and wrong and awful, and they could have won that game anyway against a fully healthy Pittsburgh Steelers unit at that point. I think Pittsburgh's a much different team when T.J. Watt in the lineup, and I've actually given Pittsburgh well beyond the extra credit they deserve for him being back in the lineup, and I can't find a way to bet Pittsburgh here. They're just awful in too many aspects of the game. Cincinnati gets healthier. Their run blocking is going to be much better now, and I think Cincinnati's coming off that brutal loss against the Browns that they've had to chew on for 2 weeks. I think I'm just watching this line percolate, and if that gets down to 3, I'll guarantee you I have a Bengals ticket in my pocket.
We aired this game on Sports USA week 1, so it's not often we air both games of a series in a season, and I'm glad we did. And by the way, you may not remember in that first week, Joe Burrow also had a very important lost fumble in that game. So you're talking about 5 turnovers. Week 1, Cincinnati was obviously not ready to play. Joe Burrow was not ready to play. That was a preseason game for him, basically, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they had 5 turnovers, and they lost by 3 in overtime. So that's all. That tells you everything you need to know right there. How often will you even be in a game 5 in the NFL specifically? I mean, usually it's good night, everybody. You're not even you have no chance. And so it's a whole different story right now where these two teams are at this time of the season.
For me, before I go back to you, Ron, I have no freaking idea how the hell anybody that runs metrics can come in on the Pittsburgh side this week, because it's not even close. You can factor in T.J. Watt. You can give 2 points. I'll give 2 points to that team with T.J. Watt back in the lineup, and we know that that's way overcompensating and still can't get there. What are your thoughts on this game, Ron?
Well, it's kind of a pivot kind of thing. We talked about the KC and all those other situations where a team wins, but they lose ground and stuff like that. In this situation, Pittsburgh last week was the strongest play that I had all season, except for week 1. They were that strong last week against New Orleans. And here I am saying that Cincinnati might be one of my strongest plays of this week, maybe the strongest play.
Really?
And it's funny because a road favorite, Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, are you crazy with J.J. Watt coming back? But I look at a few, TJ, JJ, they can all play there. You're right. But these numbers scare me for those people who like Pittsburgh. Their running back Harris, he's like 3.5 yards a carry on the year. And he's just not going to get any traction against that Cincinnati defense. Kenny Pickett, 12 sacks. He's taken 12 sacks in the last 2 weeks alone.
Wow.
Is Cincinnati ready to rush the quarterback? Again, they're underachieving, but here's their opportunity to do so. And then Pickett himself, 120 completions this year for roughly 1,040 yards. We're talking about somebody who's not even coming close to stretching the field. No. Obviously, they have offensive line concerns. They don't have a lot of firepower with their wide receivers. Johnson's good, but he's not necessarily a huge separator. And then they have the rookie Pickens on the other side and a good tight end. But it's just not scary enough. And Cincinnati has a couple of other indicators that I use that are very, very strong. I would be surprised if Cincinnati lost the game. I know that doesn't mean that the 4 or the 3.5 or whatever it ends up, that could be a costly thing because they're playing at Pittsburgh. But I like the fact the game is in the daytime and not the terrible towels at night. I think it just plays into the better team's metrics, and I come out with Cincy in this game.
Yeah, much better team.
If you're a Pittsburgh supporter, I'll leave you with this note. How good is Denver's offense? Well, it's better than Pittsburgh's on my rating. So I'll find a way to be involved in the Bengals. I really don't want to lay those points. I'll probably front load a money line parlay of the Bengals in with a later game I'm going to play anyway, and avoid dealing with laying the points. But I'll lay the 3. If it gets down to a flat 3, then I'll lay the 3 instead, possibly. So that's where I'm thinking. This is a very, very solid game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what about just Cincinnati being a road favorite more than a field goal? Doesn't that give you a little bit of like, I don't know if I've ever done this before, and I like them that much? Is there a little bit of a like pit in the stomach kind of a thing going there?
Well, you mentioned pit in the stomach.
I was going to lay the 5. I was going to lay the 5. I can't believe it's down to 3.5, 4.
There are.
I think you separate the two. You separate the two concepts. Cincinnati has been a road favorite many a time, especially last year on their run, but they haven't been a road favorite at Pittsburgh all that often. So it's a divisional game. It's all that stuff. But basically, Cincinnati's a better team. They've been there many a time before. I just can't ignore it. Would I rather lay 3? Sure, I'd rather lay 3. We'll see if it gets there. But like Chris said, there will be Cincinnati action on my end.
Yeah, good.
I have a question for you guys.
Sure you do. You always do.
Is Kansas City your number 1 rated team in the AFC now that Buffalo has faltered? Yes or no?
No.
I think it's 1A and 1B, to be honest with you. I think it's a total toss-up for different reasons. I'm not going to get caught up in Buffalo losing, but I still have an issue that they don't have a run game, and I think it's killing them. I really think it is.
Yeah, and Buffalo relies way too much on the pass, and you can live and die. If you have the run, you can always go back to that, and you won't have as much variance. But the pass could have variance if your quarterback is hurt, if it's windy, it's all those other things.
Right. So we're talking week 11 here, right? Week 11 is fine. You go to the playoffs, you don't have a run game. You better have some other stuff going for you.
Yeah, they need to shore up their defense. I still have Buffalo ahead of Kansas City, but the gap has closed tremendously. And Baltimore in the regular season deserves some mention there. And Cincinnati's not that far behind on my list as well.
Yep.
So
I think a lot of what's going on with Kansas City is by the default method, that the teams in that AFC West are far worse than anticipated. Yeah. And therefore Kansas City is inheriting something that they don't deserve. And that is, an elite status. They're getting pretty dinged up at this point. I think their game plan against the Chargers is going to have to be entirely different this week. They're going to have to run the ball. They're short on receivers. The Chargers are getting healthier and possibly get back 2 receivers. So very interesting dynamics there. If Kansas City lays a turd sandwich this week, then that narrows everything also. But Kansas City is still up there. Don't get me wrong, but stop.
It's so popular. It's unbelievable.
My contest picks are due.
Probably Dan Campbell.
Yes, those are my thoughts on Kansas City. I think that they're still a very good team, but they're not. They've got a lot to prove still.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting this week because the division could be wrapped up with going 2-0 against the Chargers if they handle them this week. But a lot of moving parts, like you mentioned, with who's in and who's out for this game.
Yeah. Plus the fact that it's a road game that's really probably almost the closest to a home game you're going to have all year at SoFi Stadium, where there'll be 50-50 for the Chargers and the Chiefs.
I made a tweet out there a couple of days ago. I just cannot believe the teams like Dallas and Green Bay sat on their behinds and watched Ndamukong Suh go to Philadelphia. I mean, if you look at Green Bay, they hardly ever stop the run. If you look at Dallas this year, they're not stopping the run. And Ndamukong Suh at Tampa was a force against the run. Look at Tampa's run defense now, and we're now out of the range where Tampa is suddenly very middle of the pack against the run. How come Philly has the guts to sign all these people, and Dallas and Jerry Jones and Green Bay, and we know their organization, they just sit on their behind and let it happen?
Well, I think Jerry doesn't mind spending the money, but anytime his ego gets involved, that means I probably didn't draft well enough to have a good run defense. So I don't want to look bad. Let's just pretend like it never happened. There's a lot of that with him.
Well, where I go with that is bad off as Tampa is. Why didn't they want him? So
they were at the beginning. They were completely up against the salary cap, and they signed Hicks instead.
Right. It's always money there, no doubt about it. So, but
I never cared for that guy. I mean, he's a good player, but I don't think he's a good attitude guy. And maybe I'm wrong, but he just
you don't need attitude when you're stopping the run.
Well, you just knew within a month of him being in Detroit that he wasn't the type of player that was, 100% involved in football and going to be a leader in the clubhouse and be a contributor. He was a lot about himself and
anger issues as well.
I'm curious whether he's like because he's so good, they tolerated him in clubhouses, and that's
no doubt, absolutely.
And Tom Brady was in the room, and there was a little bit of respect there, and I think he toned it down because of that. The one thing he's been that so many other people that play his position just can't handle is his durability. He's missed 1 or 2 games in his entire career, and durability is a big factor in the NFL. It's crazy. Rondale Moore, you want to talk about Rondale Moore? He did it again.
Yeah, that's our prop guy.
What does he do in a foreign country this week?
Are they going to make it there? I do want to comment on that game, though. I'm impressed with San Francisco. They trained in Denver this week to get used to the altitude. So they will have a slight edge over Arizona on that. And San Francisco's getting healthy again, if I'm not mistaken. So going to be an interesting game in Mexico. The field was complete and utter trash last year when they had a game there. I hope the field conditions are better and people don't get injured.
Does the altitude help Cliff Kingsbury at all, or is he still the same guy?
He'll be flakier than normal.
Yeah. I don't know about that one. The props worked last week. We did talk about running back Jacobs going under his 87.5 total. He had a whole bunch of carries. I think he had 20 or so carries, but he couldn't get there. Got close at the end. He got in the 70s, but that worked. We're not seeing a lot of props up again. There are just too many injuries to go there. Kenny Pickett's interception prop is up. It's in the 150s. I expect that to rise to 170, 180. I do expect him to throw a pick against Cincinnati in that particular game. Mixon is going to be one of those guys with Cincinnati. He's averaging about 3.5 yards per carry, but his last game, he had 5 total TDs. So it was a big breakout game for Mixon. If he averages 3.5 yards per carry, he's still going to get over his 65 yards probably, because 20 carries, 3.5 carries is 70 yards. I'm not really much of a fan with overs, but I do think in this kind of game where there's going to be a lot of punts and a lot of time of possession, I think Mixon does carry the ball a whole mess of times against Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
and he does go over the total.
Yeah. Is there a prop for how many Buffalo Bills will be actually at the game in Detroit? Over under like 20.
How many fans?
No, players. They haven't got there.
Players.
There's an interesting dynamic that this is going to be the first Thanksgiving game where the Lions have the travel disadvantage because Buffalo will already be there, and the Lions are in New York and have to fly back to Detroit. So
that is true.
And that that's unfair. It's got to be a huge disappointment to the Browns that they didn't send the game to Philadelphia or some other outdoor climate, because when you get on that controlled indoor environment, that's going to work against the Browns, because this was going to be their chance where Buffalo was going to have to grind it out on the ground and was not going to be able to pass the ball as efficiently. And now it's going to be open season. on the Browns as far as I'm concerned. What are your guys' thoughts?
I agree with all of that. By the way, what kind of a trip is it from Buffalo to Detroit for actual Bills fans to get over there and back their team with a snowstorm in their hometown?
Well, you have to drive down the most dangerous highway in North America, the 401, which is a nightmare from New York to Windsor to Detroit.
Is that around Erie?
Yeah, it's through Canada.
Oh, through Canada. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And that highway is just miserable if it's snowing or there's weather, and it's just.
So how many people are going to be at this game?
I don't know.
They'll give out some tickets to everybody concerned. Obviously, Cleveland's not in a position record-wise or fandom-wise to be, heading over to Detroit either.
Oh,
so I think you'll have more Buffalo.
You couldn't be more wrong. Those Browns fans are as loyal as they come. They travel in droves. They'll with the proximity that I think there'll be a lot of Browns fans there.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting to see. Unfortunately, the Browns fans. Like the Browns team, not playing enough defense this year.
Yeah.
What about this Dallas-Minnesota game? That's a very interesting game. Either of you have a horse in the race?
Well, go ahead, Ron.
No, I say my power ratings force me right now to take Minnesota in this game. No choice. Sorry.
Just the fact that they're a home dog, right? Any way you look at it.
Yeah, I have Minnesota slightly ahead of Dallas for power rating, and their home dog, and they're not getting enough respect. It would be much more fun to have 3 points in this game, because in toss-up games, if you're only getting even 2 points, it could end on 3. But I don't think Minnie should be an underdog in this game.
Well, you get a kick in the nuts because that's a horrible evaluation.
I'm sorry I don't have all my metrics online for you for this.
Have you watched the recent Vikings games and how the good, and I've been betting the Vikings, so it's not I was ahead of the curve on the Vikings. We mentioned how people ridicule the Vikings, and I give the Vikings all the due respect that they deserve. But the luck variance on their side, especially the last game, is just absurd. It's just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, it has to be one of the strongest luck variants in many years when you think about it. But at the same time, when's the last time you saw a team that's 4-0 at home? They're 8-1 overall. They've won 7 straight, and they're home underdogs against the team that has not been consistently great, and they just blew one of the bad blown leads of the season at Green Bay.
But the worst blown lead was the Vikings, who benefited against Buffalo. So,
yes, that's true.
It's got to reverse course at some point. And, I've always been a Kirk Cousins defender. If you look just on that last game, he got away with a lot of iffy throws. And the position that he's putting the team in with the risk factors, he's not going to get away with Dallas. And Dallas gets back a rusher this week. I forget the guy's name, which allows Parsons to come in from the side. And then they'll have 2 people rushing instead of the one they had last week. So Dallas gets a little bit stronger. And believe it or not, I'm not betting the game, but I don't think
talk is cheap, baby.
After all that,
but I see why there's Dallas love, and I respect the Vikings. I just don't think you can bet the Vikings here.
Oh, so I'm playing my Rodney Dangerfield card, hitting over 70% for the season, and I'm getting no respect. No respect at all. It's not the only reason I would play it is because they're a power rating. This is not a metric play like some of the other ones. But Dallas didn't change coaches suddenly, did they?
They were thinking about it, but no.
Yeah. So as long as that guy's in the building, I have a chance that he'll punt when he should kick a field goal or go for it or vice versa or whatever. And it's not a night game for Kirk Cousins, so I don't really see an issue.
I didn't have that big of a problem with that punt
I did.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
With the what?
With the fact that they didn't go for the field goal, I thought I would have rather done that, but I didn't have a major. I sort of got it at the time. It was the field position. I don't think they had a lot of trust in him under the circumstances and the conditions too.
Well, it's one of the times where Twitter becomes unbearable because
I wouldn't even look at it.
These idiots that sit there and tell you that the metrics said to do this or not do that, they're wasting all of our time because they don't know what's going on the field, the variables that are involved, the players that could be injured. There could be a lack of confidence. There could be a weakness that cannot be factored. There's no freaking way that you can just arbitrarily say that there is X amount percentage, so you have to do this without knowing what's going on in that individual game. The absurdity of these morons, these math hacks sitting there trying to ridicule people.
How do you really feel, Chris?
Yeah.
What?
Let it out, Chris. Let it out.
It's just so annoying.
By the way, it doesn't matter because Twitter's going to be out of business in a few weeks anyway, so it means nothing.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, analytically wise, with all the metrics and so on, Chris is right because these games are chess matches, and you're setting up your next move all the time. And coaches go on feel a lot, and it sounds like a esoteric kind of thing or whatever, but it is about that moment, and that moment could be different for one team than another, or in one game for another, or who's lining up, what the personnel is on the field.
Right.
You have to be comfortable in what you're doing. You can't have people doing something that they're not comfortable doing, something that's going to be disruptive. And going for it or not going for it could be disruptive. I mean, for a team that likes to risk it, and if they don't go for it, and they, that's a different type of thing than a team that traditionally doesn't go for it and goes for it. I mean, you can't factor those in metrics.
Right. But one thing about Mike McCarthy, he does have a history of, when it comes to clock management, that kind of stuff, not the best of all time. And so maybe that came into play here, the way he figured it out in his head. But I think there was more to it than that. And by the way, an interesting stat on this matchup here. It doesn't happen often. These teams have played each other. This is the 4th straight year they played each other, right? And the road team has won the last 3. So just that's an interesting number.
Well,
Dallas beat him last year.
Dallas beat him with Cooper Rush.
Yeah. So very interesting there. What do you think about the Vegas and the Broncos? I only care about that because I'm wondering, is this the beginning of the end for McDaniels, or are they just going to let it ride? I said it last week. I don't think they're going to fire him at all this year. But if they lose this game again, now they're 0-6 on the road this year. Okay, 0-6. It's like, how much can you trust what they're doing over there? And I know, Ron, you're going to say they don't have a great roster, which is fine, and that's giant part of the equation.
It's just unfair to if that offensive line was going to be substandard to begin with. Their tight end is out. They have basically one receiver. They don't even have their possession receiver in there. Every number 1 draft choice on defense is gone. It's unfair to any coach. Whether they do it or not, that's a management issue. But I think it's the wrong way to go.
How are these teams going to score? You have no tight end for the Raiders. They're missing their number 1. Are they missing their top 2 receivers? Because Denver's missing their top 2 receivers.
Well, no, their top receivers, Devontae Adams, so they're not missing him.
Yeah, he's in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
just that little guy. No, they've already beaten Denver, right, this year.
Correct.
But the way the Broncos are playing, to me, I take the 3 points in the Raiders and say this is their game. If they lose this game and they lose it convincingly, it's going to be a spiral like a toilet bowl for the rest of the year.
I prefer not to play this game at all. Let it stay where it is so I don't have to play it.
Let them not play this game is what you're saying.
When do you see an NFL team go through the ridicule and just the grief that they've gotten over the last week or two? You know, these guys are professionals. They've got some pride, and they've got a team that they can beat. The Raiders are going to show up this week, and I'm not sure Denver how the hell is Denver going to score? I mean, you've got a quarterback that's calling plays that don't exist or plays, audibles from his Seattle Seahawks days. The players have no idea what he's talking about.
That team is so embarrassing right now. It really is.
You have horrible coaching there. You've got a senile quarterback. I mean, come on.
He's not.
It's now or never for Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Russell Wilson, basically the Raiders have 10 sacks in 9 games. So they're a non-factor. If Russell Wilson can't get it done now, he's never going to get it done. But Denver's coaches are worse in the league right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A couple other games real quick. Eagles at the Colts. If Jeff Saturday wins on Sunday again, good for him. I'm a big Jonathan Taylor guy anyway, and I'm hoping he comes through big time. But there's something about the Eagles on the road here. Obviously they haven't lost a road game. Would they ever lose another? Can they lose 2 in a row? And to this team under these circumstances as a 7-point favorite?
No.
Short week. It's off Monday. Short week.
Yeah.
I think the Eagles come away with the win. Whether they cover, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the other team that, you mentioned it earlier, and Chris, you are the perfect example of so many people just saying, hey, look at what the Bears are doing. Isn't it really interesting? Blah, blah, blah. They still stink. They've lost 3 in a row. Okay. They're 3-7. And all these great numbers that Justin Fields is putting up, fantastic, but they don't win. Who cares? Until they start winning, and they're a dog in Atlanta. And if they don't win this week, they're 3-8.
Yeah, but you know what? They remind me of the Lions when they had Barry Sanders. When you have a guy that is that electric, that's fun to watch.
It's fun, but they still stink.
I disagree. They're not gonna go over their season win total. They weren't supposed to.
Let's hope that's correct.
They were not supposed to do well this season.
That's
we all thought that they were going to go under. They're going to go under still.
It's not the point that they're what they're supposed to do. It's what they're doing, okay? Their quarterback's running all over the place. He looks much better. I hope he becomes one of the all-time greats, and I'm rooting for him big time. But overall as a team, they've got a long way to go because they find ways to lose, and that's not a good thing. And,
yeah, but we knew they were a rebuild coming into the season.
They should have won last week, and the pick 6 cost them.
But
we knew they were a rebuild.
Yes. Well,
you're scrolling next week's games. What's interesting, I want to make one comment on it, is the Bengals are 2.5-point favorites at Tennessee in the look-ahead line. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take the points.
Chris is running to the screen.
Or are you going to wait for it to go to a 3 that it never will? Can you actually?
Oh no, it can't now. Not off Tennessee's win.
Right.
No,
exactly.
It's 1.5 right now, but
yeah. Okay. It was just sitting at 2.5 even this morning.
Really? Wow.
Okay, so you thought it was going to get to 3 or
no, never. I was just curious what you guys thought as far as that look ahead line. If I would have made the line, I would have made them 1 prior to last Thursday's game.
Same here.
And if the Bengals take care of biz this week, do you see that just being a pick 'em or even Cincinnati or even just basically a pick 'em?
If the Bengals take care of business, yeah, maybe they'll end up around 1 or whatever, but it's not going to go to 3 or anything. I just was a little surprised that it even was close to 3 with the look ahead line.
Well, so there's some heavy Rams money coming in. I wonder what happened. Anyway, I think we've exhausted our topics for this week, and I see stuff I have to bet. So
let me tease one thing out there. Speaking of teases that I never do, I think next week's show is going to be really good in terms of talking about that particular game. And I'll pin down Chris. I think we'll talk a little contest strategy on next Tuesday's show. So if you're listening to this, tune in again next Tuesday. We'll talk a little contest strategy.
Good.
All right. Well, we thank everybody for subscribing and liking and tuning in. And we babbled a little bit, but there's some good stuff here. Ted got a little emotional there, and I mean, which is okay. So everybody have a successful weekend. It can't be any worse than my last Sunday. So
good luck, guys.
Cheers.
Later.